On the Unleash The Ghouls channel, we simply love covering animation, especially on Nightmare Fuel. Of course, the biggest animation studio in the world is Disney, who have been creating feature-length classics since the 1930s, and its very first feature is also one of its scariest. At long last, it's time to meet the request of our editor Hugh, who has badgered me for years to cover this film, and talk about one of his prime sources of Nightmare Fuel, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. In its earlier years, Disney's animated features were mostly based on fairy tale literature, and here they tap into the classic story by the Brothers Grimm. And grim it certainly is. Disney nowadays is a shining, beaming light of happiness, but deep down we know that they know how to mess with our tiny precious souls whenever they like. Snow White set the precedent for scaring our little bollocks off here. The film begins by really setting the Nightmare Fuel tone. The evil queen of the land summons her magic mirror on the wall. Yeah, that's right, not mirror on the wall, which is a proper mandala effect, but the magic mirror is summoned, and goodness gracious me, the hazy mask that appears in the mirror with its blank eyes and alien-like expression are enough to give you chills. It's kinda like a theatre mask, you know, the happy and the sad one. Those have always gave me the creeps. But here, amidst the literal smoke and mirrors on display, this is one face that would give a sleep paralysis demon nightmares. The queen wants the fairest one in the land killed, this being Snow White, her stepdaughter. Because the queen is no longer considered the fairest by the mirror, she wants to regain her #1 slot, and the only way to do that is to kill off Snow White. The queen employs a huntsman to kill her, cut out her heart, put it in a box, and return it to her. That's insane to consider for a young child. This pure, innocent, beautiful young girl is to have her heart cut out and stored away, all for the sake of the queen's vanity. Though this doesn't happen, the mental image from the ideas presented are nightmarish enough. There's a subtly disturbing shot of Snow White picking flowers in a field, and in the distance the huntsman can be seen by a tree shrouded in the shade. His presence can be felt as he lures over Snow White. Super weird and unsettling. When the huntsman does go in for the kill, producing his knife, his eyes beaming in the shadows, and the music becoming more sinister, you really do feel the threat. Thankfully, he realizes the error of his ways and tells Snow White to run and hide in the woods, but this doesn't wind up being the safest decision for Snow White or the audience. In one of the most frightening sequences in all of Disney, Snow White runs into the woods. There's hardly any light to guide her way though. The bulk of the landscape is in darkness, and when combined with the very little light she can make out and the sounds of the forest around her, her mind begins to play tricks on her. Her hallucinations produce some truly nightmarish visions. Animals jump out at her and startle her. The tree branches that latch onto her clothes become talons and claws. Even the tree trunks themselves have large beaming eyes and evil expressions as they reach out to grab her. Even floating tree trunks become crocodiles and pursue her. Everything builds up, and the fright factor increases exponentially, building up and up and up until Snow White collapses in fright. The forest scene in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is amongst the elite tier of Disney's Nightmare Fuel. I can't even imagine how a kid's brain in 1937 would have processed this. The sheer amount of eyes glaring through the darkness at Snow White and the audience alike is iconic and unforgettable. Thankfully, the eyes belong to some cute and cuddly critters as opposed to bloodthirsty ones, and they guide Snow White to the home of the Seven Dwarfs, who she winds up befriending and becoming pretty much a carer for. But when the magic mirror tells the queen that Snow White is still alive, and that the heart in the box returned by the huntsman belongs to a pig, which in itself is mega off-putting, she decides to take matters into her own hands. How does she do this, you ask? She brews her very own Nightmare Fuel, of course. By combining various ingredients, the queen concocts a potion that transforms her into an old hag. Her transformation is simply ghastly. Her hair suddenly whitening, her hands and fingernails elongating, and her voice becoming an ancient cackle while her shadow on the wall reshapes itself. It's absolutely fucked. The old hag is one of Disney's most fearsome villains. Her eyes bulge and her skeletal body choppily wanders around, creaking and cracking as it moves. It gives the hag a much more demonic presence whenever on screen. Then, when setting up a poison apple to put Snow White into a deep sleep, we get even more horrific imagery as the apple becomes green and drips with poison, representing a skull. Look at the state of that, man. But the tip of the nightmare iceberg comes from one particular moment, a legitimate jump scare that has troubled people of all ages for generations. While Snow White is minding her own business in the home of the dwarves, this happens. Just drink this in. This is as bad as it gets. The fact the hag is leaning into the home through a small open window, yet again her face is shaded other than her eyes glowing. Her crooked facial features and piercing gaze looking right at Snow White and the audience, and her twisted up to no good grin means that this individual frame has been responsible for thousands of bad dreams. It all feels too real, especially when Snow White finally bites into the apple and her hand just drops lifelessly to the floorboards, releasing the apple. When the hag is defeated, it's at the hands of plunging to her death from a cliff edge being blown apart by lightning, and when the dwarves mourn Snow White, the tears and whimpering from them all, especially Dopey, is way too authentic. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs shouldn't be labelled a kids movie. This is a dark movie that even puts the shit up adults. However, it did skyrocket Walt Disney into the legacy he has today. Bearing in mind this movie was released in 1937, it cost $1.49 million to make, but made $418 million at the box office. To translate that into today's money, that's around $8.63 billion, making it the highest grossing animated film of all time when adjusted for inflation. Snow White carved a path in cinema that will never be replicated, but it should never be forgotten just how frightening it was and still is. What do you think of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and what other Disney films should we cover on Nightmare Fuel? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you to Hugh for confronting his childhood fears and editing this video, and until next time, Ghoul Gang, I've been Connor from Unleash the Ghouls. Hi ho, it's off to cower in fear I go.